What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest sitcom stars walks onto a beloved talk show set and turns a night of laughter into absolute chaos? In just 34 seconds, a single dismissive comment would trigger a meltdown so explosive that it would end with security escorting a A-list celebrity off the stage in front of a stunned studio audience. The evening started like any other taping of The Graham Norton Show. The iconic red chair sat empty, waiting. The studio audience buzzed with excitement. Graham Norton, ever the consummate professional, stood backstage, running through his notes one final time. He had hosted thousands of guests over the years. Actors, musicians, politicians, royalty. He knew how to handle anyone, or so he thought. Kaley Cuoco arrived at the studio that afternoon with an entourage that immediately raised eyebrows among the production staff. 3 assistants, 2 publicists, a personal photographer, and someone whose only job seemed to be holding her, coffee. The green room, normally a relaxed space where guests could unwind before their segment, became her command center. She sent back the fruit platter twice, complaining the grapes were not seedless enough. She demanded the temperature be lowered by exactly 3 degrees. She asked for sparkling water, then still water, then sparkling again, each time sighing heavily when staff brought it to her. The show's producer, a woman named Claire, who had been with Graham for over a decade, tried to brief Kaley on the segment structure. Graham liked to keep things loose, conversational. He would ask about her new project, maybe share a funny anecdote, and then bring out the next guest for some group banter. Simple, easy, fun. Kaley barely looked up from her phone. "I know how talk shows work," she said flatly. "I have done hundreds of these." Claire smiled politely and left her alone. When the cameras started rolling and Graham made his entrance, the audience erupted as they always did. He fed off their energy, grinning and waving, settling into his chair with that mischievous glint in his eye that promised a good time ahead. "Ladies and gentlemen, my first guest tonight needs absolutely no introduction," Graham began, his Irish accent warm and welcoming. "You know her from 8 years of making us laugh on one of the biggest sitcoms in television history. Please welcome the wonderful Kaley Cuoco." The band played. The audience cheered. Kaley walked out in a stunning designer gown, waving with a smile that looked perfect for the cameras, but somehow did not quite reach her eyes. She settled onto the couch, crossed her legs, and waited. "Kaley, welcome, welcome," Graham said enthusiastically. "You look absolutely fabulous. How are you?" "I am fine," she replied coolly. "Thank you for having me." There was already something off in her tone. Graham, professional that he was, pushed forward. "So, you have got this new project coming out. Tell us about it. It sounds fascinating." Kaley shifted in her seat. "Well, it is a thriller. I play a flight attendant who witnesses a murder, very different from anything I have done before." "That does sound different," Graham said. "I mean, we are so used to seeing you in comedy. Was it challenging to make that transition to something more dramatic?" And here is where things started to crack. Kaley let out a small laugh, but it was not friendly. "You know, Graham, I think that is a really simplistic way of looking at acting. Like I am just a comedy person who cannot do drama. I trained at actual acting schools. I have range." The audience went quiet. You could feel the temperature in the room drop. Graham, to his credit, tried to smooth it over. No, that is not what I meant at all. I just meant it must be exciting to show a different side of your talents. That is all." "Right," Kaley said, clearly not convinced. "Sure." An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. Graham glanced at his notes, trying to find a new direction. "So, tell me about working with the director on this. I hear he is quite demanding." "He knows what he wants," Kaley said. "Unlike some people." Graham blinked. "Sorry?" "Nothing," Kaley said, waving her hand dismissively. "It is just that some directors, Some hosts, they ask these surface-level questions and expect you to just perform like a trained SEAL. Give them a cute anecdote, make the audience laugh, sell the project. It gets tiresome. The audience gasped quietly. This was not normal talk show behavior. Guests did not insult the host, especially not Graham Norton, who was beloved by everyone. Graham sat back in his chair, his smile still in place, but his eyes showing something else now. Calculation. He was deciding how to handle this. "Well, I certainly hope I am not making you feel like a trained SEAL, Kaley," he said carefully. "I am just trying to have a conversation and let people get to know you a bit." "Are you, though?" Kaley shot back. "Because it feels like you are just going through a script, asking the same boring questions you ask everyone. Where is the substance? Where's the real interview?" The audience was completely silent now. Some people had their hands over their mouths. This was car crash television, and no one could look away. Graham leaned forward slightly. His voice remained calm, measured, but there was steel underneath it now. "Kaley, I have been doing this show for many years. I have interviewed thousands of people, actors, musicians, activists, world leaders, and I pride myself on making everyone feel comfortable and having a genuine conversation. If my questions seem boring to you, I apologize. Perhaps you would like to tell me what you would rather talk about." It was a perfect response, polite but firm, giving her a chance to reset, to pivot, to save face. She did not take it. "Maybe I would rather talk about how this show has become so predictable," Kaley said, her voice rising. "You bring out celebrities. You pour them wine. You giggle at everything they say, and everyone goes home happy. But is anyone actually saying anything real? Is anyone being honest?" "I think our guests are quite honest," Graham replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. "In fact, I think most people enjoy coming here because they can relax and be themselves without being interrogated." "Interrogated," Kaley repeated mockingly. "God forbid someone asks a challenging question. God forbid we have an actual conversation instead of this fluff." Graham set down his note cards. The smile was gone now. "You know what, Kaley? I am not quite sure what is happening here. You agreed to come on the show. You knew what kind of show it was. If you wanted a hard-hitting political interview, perhaps you should have gone somewhere else. This is meant to be fun, entertaining, a nice time for everyone." "A nice time," Kaley scoffed. "Right. Just keep everything surface level. Do not dig too deep. Do not make anyone uncomfortable. Just smile and wave and sell your project like a good little puppet." The audience was stirring now, murmuring to each other. This had gone way past awkward into something else entirely. Graham stood up. He actually stood up from his chair, which he never did during an interview. "I think we need to take a break," he said, looking directly at the producers off camera. "Oh, are we taking a break?" Kaley said, also standing. "Cannot handle a little honesty, Graham? Cannot handle someone who does not want to play your little game?" "This is not about honesty," Graham said, his voice firm but still controlled. "This is about respect. You came onto my show, into my house, so to speak, and you have done nothing but insult me, insult the format, and insult the audience who came here to have a good time. That is not honesty. That is just rudeness." "Rudeness?" Kaley's voice went up an octave. "You want to talk about rudeness? How about the rudeness of asking me the same garbage questions that every other host asks? How about the rudeness of treating me like I am just here to promote something instead of being an actual artist?" Graham took a deep breath. You could see him deciding something in real time. "You are absolutely right," he said quietly. "You are an artist. And as an artist, you deserve better than this. So I think it would be best if we end this interview now." Kaley froze. "Excuse me? I'm asking you to leave," Graham said clearly. "This is not working. You are not happy. I am not happy. The audience is certainly not happy. So let us just call it here. You cannot kick me off your show, Kaley said, her face flushing red. I can, actually, Graham replied. It is my show, and I am asking you politely to leave the stage. This is unbelievable, Kaley said, looking around at the audience as if they would support her. They stared back in shocked silence. You are kicking me off because I dared to challenge you? Because I did not just sit here and giggle at your jokes? I am asking you to leave because you have been nothing but disrespectful from the moment you sat down, Graham said, his voice steady. I have had guests disagree with me before. I have had robust debates. I have had people challenge me on things. But they did it with respect, with courtesy. You came here with an agenda to prove some point, and I am not interested in being part of it. Kaley grabbed her purse from beside the couch. Fine. I did not want to be here anyway. This show is a joke. You are a joke. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Someone booed. Graham did not rise to the bait. He simply gestured toward the wings. The exit is that way. You know what your problem is, Graham? Kaley said, pointing at him. You are too safe. You never take risks. You never push boundaries. You just sit here in your comfortable little chair and let famous people sell their projects. And everyone pretends it is entertainment. Well, some of us want more. Some of us want substance. Then I hope you find it, Graham said simply. Just not here. Please leave. Kaley stood there for a moment, clearly expecting him to back down, to apologize, to beg her to stay. When he did not. When he just stood there, calmly waiting for her to go. Something in her snapped. You are going to regret this, she hissed. Do you know who I am? Do you know how many people watch my show? How many fans I have? I do, Graham said. And I am sure they are lovely people who would be very disappointed to see you behaving this way. That hit a nerve. Kaley's face went from red to almost purple. How dare you? How dare you? You smug, self-satisfied, pompous. Security, Graham called out calmly. 2 security guards appeared from the wings. They were not aggressive, not grabbing her or manhandling her. They simply stood there, a silent presence. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, one of them said, gently. Kaley looked at them, looked at Graham, looked at the audience. You could see the moment she realized this was actually happening, that she had pushed too far and there was no coming back from it. This is insane, she said, but her voice had lost its fire. She sounded almost confused now. You cannot just, I am a guest. You invited me. And now I am uninviting you, Graham said. Please go. The security guards moved closer, not threatening, just present. Kaley let out a bitter laugh. Wow. Okay, fine. I am leaving. But everyone is going to hear about this. Everyone is going to know how you treat people. They can hear whatever you want to tell them, Graham said. But right now, you need to leave my studio. Kaley turned to the audience one last time. You people just sit there? You're just going to let him do this? Silence. Complete silence. She shook her head in disgust and started walking toward the wings, the security guards flanking her. Just before she disappeared from view, she turned back. You have not heard the last of this, Graham. I promise you that. And then she was gone. The studio remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Graham stood there, taking deep breaths, collecting himself. Then he turned to the audience with a slightly sheepish smile. Well, he said, that was unexpected. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Graham sat back down in his chair, straightening his jacket. I am terribly sorry you all had to witness that. That is not how we usually do things here. More laughs, more supportive applause. I want to be clear. Graham continued, his voice serious now. I have nothing against Kaley Cuoco. I think she is a talented actress, but I also think that when you come onto someone's show, you treat them with basic respect, and that was not happening tonight. The audience erupted in applause. Supportive, understanding applause. Graham smiled, genuinely this time. Right then. Shall we try this again? I have another guest backstage who I promise will be much more pleasant. Laughter and cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. And just like that, the show went on. Because that is what Graham Norton did. He was a professional. He kept going. But backstage, chaos had erupted. Kaley's publicists were in full damage control mode, trying to figure out what to say, how to spin this. The producers were reviewing the footage, trying to decide how much of the confrontation to actually air. Security was escorting Kaley to her car while she ranted on her phone to someone about lawyers and lawsuits and career destruction. Back in the studio, Graham introduced his next guest, a charming British actor who had the audience laughing within seconds. The energy shifted completely, transforming from tense and uncomfortable to warm and fun. It was like the Kaley incident had been a bad dream that everyone was already starting to forget. But of course, it was not forgotten. It could not be forgotten. Because in the wings, camera operators had captured every single moment, every insult, every gesture, every angry word. The footage was damning, clear and undeniable. Graham finished the show with his usual grace and humor. He thanked the audience, thanked his guests, made a few jokes about the evening's earlier drama without being cruel or vindictive. He was, as always, a class act. When the cameras stopped rolling and the audience filed out, still buzzing about what they had witnessed, Graham sat alone on his couch for a moment. One of the producers approached him carefully. "Are you okay?" she asked. Graham nodded slowly. "I'm fine. I've never had to do that before. Ask someone to leave." "You handled it perfectly," the producer assured him. She was completely out of line. Everyone could see that. "I know," Graham said quietly. "But still, it is not a nice feeling, is it? Throwing someone out." "You did not throw her out," the producer corrected gently. "You set a boundary when she crossed a line repeatedly. There is a difference." Graham smiled at her. "I suppose you are right." He stood up, stretched, and looked around the empty studio. The magic of television was that in a few days, this would air, and millions of people would watch it. They would see exactly what happened. They would form their own opinions. But Graham already knew what those opinions would be, because the footage did not lie. It showed a host trying his best to conduct a pleasant interview and a guest determined to make it difficult. It showed patience meeting hostility. It showed professionalism meeting entitlement. The conversation between them had started normally enough, just simple questions about her work, but Kaley had turned it into something else entirely. She had challenged him not with intelligent discourse, but with contempt. She had mistaken rudeness for honesty and aggression for authenticity. And when Graham had finally said enough, when he had drawn that line in the sand, she had revealed herself completely. The anger, the threats, the inability to accept responsibility for her own behavior. All of it caught on camera. All of it undeniable. As Graham gathered his things and headed to his dressing room, he thought about all the guests he had hosted over the years. The funny ones, the shy ones, the nervous ones, the brilliant ones. Some had been difficult in small ways, requiring extra patience or careful handling. But none had ever been like this. None had ever forced him to make such a dramatic decision. He hoped he would never have to do it again. But if he did, he knew he would handle it the same way. With dignity, with firmness, and with respect for his audience and his craft. Because that was who Graham Norton was. A professional who knew his worth and refused to be diminished by someone else's bad behavior, no matter how famous they were. The door to his dressing room closed behind him, shutting out the noise and chaos of the evening. Tomorrow, the footage would be reviewed, decisions would be made about editing, statements would be prepared. But tonight, it was over. Graham Norton had defended his show, his standards, and himself, and he had done it with the same grace and class that had made him one of the most beloved hosts in television history. The red couch sat empty under the stage lights, waiting for the next show, the next guest, the next conversation. Because no matter what had happened tonight, the Graham Norton show would go on. It always did. And somewhere in the city, Kaley Cuoco sat in her hotel room, finally alone without her entourage, replaying the evening in her mind. The looks on people's faces, the silence from the audience, the calm certainty in Graham's voice when he asked her to leave. Maybe, in the quiet of that moment, she began to understand what she had done. Or maybe she was still convinced she had been right, that everyone else was wrong, that she had been the victim of an unfair host and an unsympathetic audience. Either way, it did not matter anymore. The cameras had captured everything. The truth was on tape. And soon, the world would see exactly what happened when a Hollywood star forgot that talent does not excuse bad behavior, and fame does not grant permission to treat others with contempt. The conversation that ended Kaley Cuoco's appearance on the Graham Norton show was not long. From her first dismissive comment to her final angry exit, the whole confrontation lasted maybe 10 minutes. But in those 10 minutes, she had managed to alienate an entire studio audience, insult one of television's most respected hosts, and create a moment that would define her in ways she never intended. All because she could not simply sit down, answer some questions, and treat another human being with basic courtesy and respect.